Libtards who can't compete in the arena of ideas. And gentlemen, by now everyone has become acquainted with the recent shooting in Arizona perpetrated by one Jared Lee Loughner. What you also probably know is various members of the antique media have gone into overdrive trying to pin this shooting on the Tea Party or violent rhetoric coming forth from various conservatives. Some things everyone needs to consider. Jared was an atheist. He called the Bible fiction and a fictional story. He was a 9/11 truther. He believed the government was responsible for bringing down the Twin Towers. He's obviously mentally ill just on that alone. He also believed the government faked the Apollo moon landing. Jared was a registered independent and did not even bother to vote in the recent midterm elections. Jared liked to smoke pot, with the left now blamed drugs for this. Jared was very reclusive, so a lot of people who he was friends with in past years had not seen him for some time. Testimony from one of his former friends, Zach Osler, indicates that Jared did not watch the news, disliked the news, and didn't partake in political talk radio. Jared listed the Communist Manifesto as one of his favorite books. A lot of Jared's ramblings were incoherent and made no sense. Jared hated Gabrielle Giffords, but his disdain for her goes back to 2007, before Sarah Palin was a household name. One can also compare and contrast how the antique media reacted to the Fort Hood shootings and how they're handling this fiasco in Arizona. They urged caution in the wake of Fort Hood. We must not pin the blame too quickly on anyone or any institution. That's not the case now. I wonder why. So looking at Jared's profile and his beliefs, it doesn't fit the Tea Party template. That probably won't stop them, though. This brings me to my next point. Various members of the antique media blaming the right for the shooting in Arizona before we knew anything. They're blaming everyone but the guy who pulled the trigger. Chris Matthews blamed Mark Levin and Michael Savage. Dana Milbank was blaming Glenn Beck and Sarah Palin. The New York Times and the Southern Poverty Law Center were calling Mr. Loughner a right-winger, which doesn't fit. MoveOn.org is hoping cooler heads prevail, urging all members of Congress to drop rhetorical references to violence in the wake of this shooting. However, I wonder if MoveOn will include themselves, since they regularly violated Godwin's law, accusing Bush of being Hitler-esque. I doubt it. This brings me to my final point. We have numerous documented cases of leftists urging violence against Republicans, conservatives, and libertarians. Where's the outrage of that? What about Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn? Hello? Montel Williams urged Michelle Bachmann to slit her own throat at one point. Chris Matthews said someone's going to jam a CO2 pellet into Rush's head and he's going to explode. Mike Malloy urged Glenn Beck to commit suicide. He also wished that Rush would choke to death. Malloy, trying to pump up his flagging ratings, also said someone ought to wrap a strong Republican entrail around Matt Drudge's neck, hoist him up about 6 feet in the air, and watch him bounce. Is that incendiary rhetoric? Of course, Malloy, also on that same program, didn't care if the right wing used that statement. So I guess he doesn't care. It's all a matter of perception, isn't it? Bonnie Flank, on some show emceed by Bill Maher, joked about an assassination attempt on Dick Cheney, talking about how the assassination attempt failed and they wasted a bomb. Ed Schultz joked about ripping Dick Cheney's heart out and kicking it around. AFL-CIO President Trumka thanked Pelosi for driving Obamacare down the throats of Republicans and out their backsides. Violent rhetoric? Is this violent rhetoric? Actor John Cusack tweeted, "I am for a satanic death cult center at Fox News headquarters and outside the offices of Dick Armey and Newt Gingrich and all the GOP welfare freaks," end quote. A user at Media Matters called Project 21's Deneen Borelli a teabagging Negro, except he used the other N-word, which I hate that word. On the November 4th, 1994 edition of PBS's To the Contrary, then USA Today columnist and Pacifica Radio talk show host Julianne Malvo said of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, quote, "I hope his wife feeds him lots of eggs and butter and he dies early like many black men do of heart disease. He is an absolutely reprehensible person," end quote. Who can forget Obama's statement about they bring a knife and we bring a gun? Is that violent rhetoric that might pump up some of these mentally ill leftists from Chicago? What if Ron Paul had said something similar concerning the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve brings a knife and we bring a gun. Wonder if they would have gone nuts over that. Lastly, and there's certainly more to whet your appetite for violent leftist rhetoric in the links under the video, who can forget about the 1010 climate change video, where adults and children who refused to go along with things like cap and trade and the general enviro climate agenda are blown up in the video? Does that qualify as hateful rhetoric? Just wondering. Have a nice day.